Hi, I'm Jenny, Head of Marketing for Advanced Performance, the specialist running stores, and title sponsor for many Sublime racing events. I'm here today to interview Martin Jennings of Sublime Racing and race director for Enervit Peterborough Marathon and Sublime 24. Martin, how have you been finding things during the COVID pandemic?
Hi, Jenny. Tough, as you might expect. Just like everyone else, really, the impact of COVID has been devastating, really. From an events point of view, it pretty much stopped everything dead in its tracks. So just before the lockdown, we had our Long Sutton half marathon and 10K, and we put that on with COVID secure mitigation, and that went really well. But that was our last event. Since then, pretty much everything has had to be cancelled or postponed, which is a bit of a shame, really, because obviously we're in our third year now, and everything seemed to be going really well. Sublime was gathering a lot of momentum, both in terms of the events, but also the, if you like, fan base, our runners and race makers and everything. So, yeah, it's been really sad, but in the scheme of things, I suppose it's a minor inconvenience. There's a lot of people out there that have been impacted in obviously much more serious ways, but certainly from an events point of view, it's been pretty devastating.
Yeah. So how many events have you needed to cancel?
Well, a handful of our 10Ks, probably four or so of our 10Ks. But in most cases, the events weren't actually open for entries, so that didn't cause too much of a problem. The two big events that we would market early and had lots of entries for, of course, are our two flagship events, the Enervit Peterborough Marathon and the Sublime 24. So both of which we had entries, both of which, well, certainly the marathon people were in full training for. So that was a huge impact, obviously. Initially, sorry, Jenny.
That's okay. I was going to say, what were the reactions of your runners to your cancellations?
Really good, actually. They've seemed to. I mean, initially I thought it was a really great response to Sublime, but looking at other events as well, they seem to have been incredibly supportive. You know, when I think the key thing is good communication. For us, we were certainly with the marathon, we thought we may be able to go ahead. In the early days, it was really unclear what was going to happen with COVID and the restrictions that were going to take place. And for us, we have under 1,000 runners, and we thought that we may be able to go ahead. So we were keeping in contact with the runners all the time, just saying, look, it's not a certainty by any means, but at this stage, we are ploughing on. And sadly, as we got nearer to it, we did actually have to cancel. But it really and truly, the support from the runners has been absolutely incredible. Everyone's been really positive, loads of thanks for the great communication. But I think partly, you know, what we stand for at Sublime is about that really great experience for the runners. And we've kind of won the hearts of lots of runners locally. And I think that's definitely helped us, for sure. You know, when we do deliver bad news, we tend to be supportive, which is great. You know?
How do you see things unfolding in coming months?
Well, the crystal ball would be nice right now. Hopefully things are starting to come back. Obviously, we've had a fairly significant event, multiple thousand participant event happened a couple of weeks ago, the Kew Gardens 10K. And that was really exciting for us, because it means that the events world is moving on, and the mitigation they put in place was really effective. The feedback from the runners, the local residents, and local authorities, everything's been positive that's come off the back of that. And part of the things that we just don't know is how people will respond to events coming into their area, you know. And so there's lots of changes. We can't, you know, in the same way that race didn't go ahead as it always would have done. They look different, they will feel different. And to a certain extent, some of the measures that need to be put in place bring with them some benefits. You know, for example, they were saying that the race felt less crowded and the runners had a bit more space around them. But on the other hand, you're not going to have the same social element that you have at a race. You know, if you've had a great race and you're buzzing and you want to talk to your friends, you can't, you know, part of that is all of the clubs, or all of the runners from the same club all joining together and meeting up at the end. Of course, that can't take place. But in terms of how it's unfolding, assuming that we don't have, you know, really heavyweight restrictions coming in, I think the small to medium events, I'm thinking sort of under 1,000 participants, maybe not the big city marathons, but under 1,000 participants will probably be able to go ahead, but with lots of mitigation in place, lots of COVID-19 restrictions in place. So they'll be different, but we'll be able to get events back on for sure.
Yeah. What's your next planned event? All being well, fingers crossed.
Yes, well, currently we're planning for the Advanced Performance New Year's Eve 10K at Ferry Meadows. That's always been one of our biggest events and most popular events. And thankfully, the venue itself lends itself to COVID secure mitigation. It's a relatively isolated location. So obviously
most of it normally was outdoors, wasn't it?
Indeed, yeah. So where we would use in the past, we would have had certain indoor areas for race control and registration and package and things like that. Of course, we won't be able to use them, but it's not on open roads. It doesn't run through residential areas and things like that. So from that point of view, it's ideal. And the planning is obviously well underway with that. There are lots of other legal requirements now in terms of approvals from local authorities and what have you. And all of those are looking really positive. We're obviously in communication with them, and we're working through all the details with them to make sure that we can tick all the boxes and satisfy them. But at the moment, the event is open for entries, and entries are trickling in. We've not, if you like, marketed the event because we need to, really and truly, we need to make sure that we can tick all of those boxes before we take it to market. But we're totally confident. We've pretty much been given the green light. It's now actually securing down all of the signatures required, if you like.
Yeah. Can you sort of tell us how you'd make a mass participation event safe for everyone to take part?
Yes. I suppose
lots of people do wonder, and I think lots of people have been waiting to see how things evolve, you know, so having that kind of information available to people would be great.
Yes. It seems quite, at first thought, it might be quite difficult to think of having 500 to 1,000 runners in one place and it being a safe.
That's hard to picture it.
Yeah, indeed. And just referring back to the recent event at Kew Gardens, they had, albeit over the weekend, they had 3,500 participants. They had reduced the number of runners because that was the number that they felt was a manageable number. And as well, I think they felt an element of responsibility on their shoulders to get it right, and they did get it right. For us, we will, whilst we're not putting a cap on the numbers because of the way we're arranging it, is much more about the distance between people and the maximum number of people on the course at any point of time rather than how many people we push through over the course of the day. It's ultimately, it's all about social distancing. It's about putting in place measures that ensure that nobody is ever within 2 meters of each other. All of the normal COVID-19 requirements are there, and also guidance that you wouldn't necessarily see. So for argument's sake, if you went running in the park or walking in the park, you may not wear a face mask.
Mm-hmm.
But when the participants arrive and until they actually get to the start line, we'll ask them to wear face masks. Okay. The key elements, I suppose, really to pull them out would be that it's unlike a normal traditional race where we may have 1,000 people in the start funnel all having their race briefing and waiting to set off. In essence, it's going to be a single file start line. Okay. And we will give everyone a start time based on their predicted finish time, and that will allow us to set the fastest runners off first. They'll be set off with a 5-second interval between each runner.
Right.
And that means that obviously with the fastest first, we can minimise the amount of overtaking. There will be some overtaking, but there are very few sections, literally a few meters on the whole of the 10K course, where it would be difficult to overtake and maintain a 2 meter a 2 meter distance. So during those areas, it would be against the rules to overtake. In essence, if you can't overtake with a 2 meter gap, you can't overtake. But that's literally just a few sections on the course, hardly anything. So the way it's been calculated, if we set people off every 5 seconds, that will give them on average throughout the course, they'll be 18 meters apart. So there's ample room in terms of, everyone's breath and all of that type of thing. So the whole thing is about eliminating contact. So we won't have a registration. We'll have a virtual prize giving post-event that will be done online and on social media. Yeah. We toyed a lot with the idea of not having a baggage department, and I think we will be offering a baggage service, largely because it's a winter race and there could be a fair walk between the car and the start line. Yeah. And of course, irrespective of the COVID situation, we also have all of our normal what should I say, cares and duties for our runners, and one of them of course is keeping them safe and warm, etc. Yeah. So the baggage will be a one-way, a zero contact, minimum of 2 meters between our race makers and the runners. When the runners approach the baggage, it'll be in a one-way system. They'll be asked to wear their face masks. There'll be no handing bags directly to the race makers. So there's a whole load of mitigation all put in place. Right. Probably our biggest challenge, Jenny, is going to be how we minimize the socializing before and after the event. Yeah. There's always quite a bit of congregation. It's kind of part of what happens to athletes, isn't it? So it is. It's going to be odd for people, but people that do want to get back to racing, I think for now it's going to be the way, isn't it? Yes, I think part of it is going to be really clear communication with the runners before the race, and it in a funny sort of way almost putting the responsibility onto them, because if we can set the guidelines, we can have, and we will have in place, if people are blatantly neglecting the social distancing, we can and we will disqualify people. Of course, that's not what we want to do, but we have a responsibility, not just to our runners, but to our volunteers and to local residents, the park, the people that work in the park, etc. But also we have a responsibility to the events industry. If we're putting on a reasonably big event in Peterborough, there's going to be a lot of eyes on us to ensure that we do it responsibly. So we will have to police it before and afterwards if we see people not socially distancing.
Well, with it being that time of year too, there are probably, although there are always people in the park, you're not going to have to deal with quite the numbers you would if you were trying to put something on in the middle of the summer.
No, exactly.
That also works to advantage, I assume, too.
Yes. Well, I think certainly if it was in the middle of the summer, there would have to be restrictions in terms of public access. And we are in communication with the park at the moment about that as well, even though it is a winter event. But there's there's a whole load of mitigation that's going to go on top of our normal event management plan, and you know, we're incredibly confident we can do it safely. I think that our biggest challenge probably is not whether we can put it on safely, it's that people can understand how safe it is. And I don't mean that from a point of view of selling entries. I don't mean that. I mean it from the point of view of local residents and public perception. What we don't want to happen is for it to look like we don't care and we're just going ahead anyway. That's absolutely not the case, you know.
Yeah, appreciate that. And anyone who's been to a Sublime race knows you have a fantastic team of race makers. Are they still keen to volunteer? Because I assume that with all the extra stuff that's going to have to happen for a race to take place, you're probably going to need more of your race makers than usual. Yes. So firstly, you're absolutely right. Our race makers are fabulous, obviously. The events can't take place without our race makers, and the way we look after our race makers is really nice. Part of that's going to go, sadly, because you know we have them in and we have our own little cafe area and they get their goodie bags and whatever, and we won't be able to do that. But obviously they get their free race entry and things like that, and it's created this massive team of, I think there's something like 400 registered race makers with us now. It's incredible. Yeah, brilliant. And the feedback is always really positive afterwards. They really enjoy it, and they like to see both sides of the event, you know, as a runner, and then see how much goes in. And every time they can't believe just how much work goes into putting these events on. The people we're talking to about it, in terms of are they still keen to volunteer, the answer to that is absolutely, providing it's safe. And again, it's our responsibility. For people that come to Sublime events, have probably seen my mum whizzing about all over the place. And without revealing her age, let's say she's in the vulnerable category. So I take it upon myself that if it's not safe enough for my mum to be there, then the event shouldn't take place, you know. And I think that's a really nice benchmark. And it will be. But there, of course, a lot of our race makers are sort of older people or retired runners or what have you that might be in that vulnerable category. But generally speaking, everyone's just so mad keen to get back and enjoy what we do. So let's make that happen. Yeah. Okay. It's a silly question maybe, but have you ever experienced anything like this before? I can't imagine that. I haven't, but I don't know, you know. No, it's certainly challenging. I suppose the only thing really for us was just before the lockdown, we could see the way things were going, and there was a real appetite for the races to continue, and we had, it was in March, so it's a spring half marathon at Long Sutton. Okay. And we implemented quite a lot of the measures. So, for example, we didn't have a mass start. We actually had an open start, which was quite good. So whilst we didn't set them off with 5 second intervals, we had a wide open field with an open start, and just invited people to go based on their feeling. You know, in a normal
funnel, the faster runners find their way to the front, etc.
Yeah.
And that worked really well. But we're likely to have many more runners at New Year's Eve, so we would need to be more organised than that. But we didn't have baggage, we didn't have registration, we did a virtual prize giving. And again, the feedback was incredible, because without that, we wouldn't have put the race on. And people were so glad to be able to run, and they felt safe. That's the most important thing, that everyone feels safe, and the volunteers too, you know.
Okay. What other challenges do you face around putting on an event?
Well, it's all of the above, really. Ultimately, it's safety. That's the two things that we have to ensure we get right: the safety, obviously, of the volunteers, you know, our race makers, the runners themselves, our crew, you know, the people that are with us day in, day out. And then you've got the less so with the New Year's Eve, but certainly with the Enervit Peterborough Marathon, we will be going through residential areas. So it's really important that the public feel totally comfortable that it's a totally safe environment, and that public perception is absolutely key. In fact, we were hoping to put an event on before the Advanced Performance New Year's Eve 10K, and we had approval from the venue to do it, but we just felt the public perception. There's a tiny amount of the course that went through a residential area, and we just felt it was too soon. And even though we felt totally comfortable we could do it safely, we just didn't feel it was appropriate at that time. So, and that's a feel thing, you know. Even now with the, you know, the Peterborough Marathon's been postponed now to next April. We still don't know how the public's going to respond, albeit 6 months away. We don't know how things, if things.
We don't know what the situation's going to be like. Yeah. So you have to judge it, don't you, as you go along when circumstances change.
It was quite interesting, Jenny, to see Manchester have just moved obviously they cancelled this year and postponed everyone over to next year. They've now moved it now till the autumn. Okay. Obviously, like London have. So they're obviously buying themselves a bit of breathing space. For us, we're not a big city marathon, albeit we do touch on the city, of course. But you know, we're planned for April, and you know, we just hope that will.
About the same numbers either, are we? Is it the races like Manchester?
Yeah.
You know, so you've not got those number of people going through the streets and maybe unsettling people, you know, local residents.
I think that for us, the bulk of it, the way firstly, we're likely to be under 1,000 runners, and that seems to be a bit of a threshold. Wow. And secondly, the way we set them off, you know, it will take a long time to push everyone through the start, but we can almost keep it down to single file. When you look at these big city marathons, you just wouldn't get the volume of people through in single file, you know. No. So we should be fine. The good thing is, you know, we have really great relationship with the Peterborough City Council, great communication with them. They're very positive. The Safety Advisory Group that we have a great relationship with them. I
was going to say, I'm assuming there are more legal requirements as well now.
Indeed, yeah. Well, the two, there's always been, when you put an event on, there's always an awful lot of regulation to ensure the safety of people, and that responsibility falls on the event organizer, irrespective of COVID. So before every event, you have to notify the Safety Advisory Group, but where we can, we meet with them, we go through our event management plan with them, and we take on board their advice. So I mean, the Safety Advisory Group is exactly that. It's an advisory body that is made up of the local authority, highways, the police department, ambulance service, fire brigade, etc. And these guys know what they're talking about. So from when we put an event on, we always engage with them. We always take on board everything they say, and we found that incredibly helpful. Of course, now everyone is looking at COVID. So we have all of our original risk assessments and event management plans and all of that. And then we have an extra complete section, which is purely around COVID-19 mitigations and risk assessments and what have you. So the two big changes now are that historically, if you're on private land, you didn't actually need to seek local authority approval, albeit we did anyway. But you have to now, and you also have to have them, in essence, sign off your COVID secure plan, and the same with the venue. And they're now, where they wouldn't have necessarily done this before, they're involving Public Health England, obviously, who's a keen eye on the national situation with COVID-19. So there's more regulations in place, but it's all for the right reasons, you know. And the key thing to remember for us is we're not trying to get our event on through the, you know, to avoid anything. If it's not safe and the right thing to do, we won't do it. It's as simple as that. You know?
Right. Yeah. Given to that, it's something there's been talk about parkrun possibly coming back. Do you think that will be restarting soon?
Well, that's quite.
We've got the same kind of thing. How would you go about it? Because some of the venues have lots and lots of people going through, you know, on a Saturday morning.
Yes, well, actually, there's a you probably know there's a parkrun at Fairy Meadows, which is a venue we use for our New Year's Eve race. I don't know anything, you know, from our side of things, if you like, as an event organizer. I've seen that they've put out a statement say that potentially they'll be up and running in October. It'd be fabulous to see them back. I think for so many people, this lockdown's been, you know, quite mentally, I think if we can all get back out running, it's going to be fabulous. The challenges they face, I don't know how they will overcome them. You know, that certainly the mitigation that we're putting in place for the starts and things like that would be a lot more difficult if you're not chip timing and things like that. But certainly it'd be fabulous to see them back. I'm keeping a keen eye on it myself to see what happens. I think if parkrun can go ahead, then it pretty much gives the green light for most events, I would say. Certainly, you know, the really well organised events that are in a position to be doing things like the time trial start and all this type of thing. I think they should almost be a formality if parkrun are allowed to run.
Well, thanks for your candid reply to my questions. Is there anything else that you wanted to add before we sort of draw the thing to a close?
No, I think thank you for doing this with me, Jenny. I think it's been a really good opportunity to almost, I know a lot of our runners are constantly looking at Facebook and our website to see what's happening, and it's difficult to explain what's going on, largely because we don't know what's going to unfold. We just genuinely don't. But and so much of the work that's been going on in the background has never come to fruition. So, you know, 6 months ago we would have been able to put on a COVID secure event, but we wouldn't have been able to do it. There wouldn't have been the approval from local authorities, and we wouldn't have. We run all of our events under Run Britain licence, England Athletics approved. So we couldn't have done it anyway, even though we were geared up for it. But it's quite nice to talk it through, and hopefully anyone watching the video will maybe comment and just let us know their thoughts. It would be great for us to see the feedback and whether there is an appetite. You've asked me a lot of questions about volunteers' appetite for it, whether people will. One of the things that's really important to me actually is if people feel comfortable to come to an event, both as a race maker and as a runner. So hopefully people will jump on the bottom of this and comment and give us that kind of feedback. That would be fabulous.
Okay, great. Thanks for your time.
Okay, thank you.
I look forward to seeing the responses.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.